I've done black. Alrighty. All righty, thank you all for your patience. It is 1:09. We are now back in session. And we are on item number 20, Workforce Housing Program. Staff is going to present us with some possible changes.
Yes, good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commissioners. Twee shot again for the record. This item's item D2, and before you is a follow-up from the June 2024 workshop, where the board had a quick update on all of our policies. The board had asked us to obtain industry input on the topics that were discussed. We did so in August of last year, and we've compiled the data, and we're here to present that. With me, we have our Deputy Director, Jeff Gagnon, and our Principal Planner, who is our expert, Maria Bello. So before, I'd like to just go over again, before we go into those items that we're reporting back on, we'd like to actually, for the benefit of the public, to give a quick history of the program. So as I said before, we held a stakeholders meeting on August 14th, and also provided about 30 days afterwards for those that couldn't make it to the meeting to be able to provide written input to us. The stakeholders consist of agents, developers, management company, lenders, as well as the development community and property owners. So with that, the first slide, please. See. Okay, so a quick overview. This is what we're discussing, so I've kind of discussed that already. But the history, so back in 2006, the Workforce Housing Program was adopted as a mandatory program, replacing the not so effective voluntary density bonus program. In 2010, due to economic conditions, the program was revised to decrease the required percentage as well as the affordability period. Then 2019, the program again was revised to encourage for sale, on-site for sale units. It also streamlined the density bonus up to 50%. So this is the first time in lieu of fees was increased, as well as the exchange option was introduced. So the exchange option is where developers would have an agreement to, where one would fulfill the obligation for the other. So in 2023, we came back to the board. There were some revisions to improve compliance monitoring and addressing fees that were charged to the tenant. And throughout the process, we as staff try to keep up with emerging trends, adjust our program as needed so that it could be beneficial for all. We returned back in June of 2024 to the board, and we're here again to report on those direction. Next slide. All right. So again, this is a mandatory inclusionary program, meaning that every project in the urban-suburban tier with 10 or more units has an obligation to provide workforce housing. There's also a voluntary component where a developer could ask for more density in return for a larger component of the required workforce housing units. Again, there are ways in which workforce housing can be met. It can be done off-site, on-site, through the exchange program, in lieu fees, and again, purchase and restriction of existing units. Also donate developable land or utilize, again, once again, the exchange program. So for sale units, if a unit is to be sold within the 15-year of maintenance of affordability, it must be sold to an income-qualified household, and the 15-year period begins again, so it's a recurring. And with rental, it's a 30-year maintenance of affordability. So Jeff will now walk you through the income restrictions and the area median income. Actually, I missed a slide. This next slide is really just the areas in which the workforce housing unit program is applicable. It's the white areas within the red boundaries. So again, the board also placed conditions of approval on workforce housing in the amendments outside of the U.S. urban-suburban tier. So now Jeff is going to go over the income categories.
Now I'm up. Thank you, Tui. So to continue with the income ranges for the workforce housing program, There's specific percentages of income that are in 4 different categories, either low, moderate 1, moderate 2, and also middle categories. And these percentages are based off of area median income, or AMI, and that number is established by HUD. For 2024, that was $104,000. Continuing, for rental prices for workforce housing units, the workforce housing prices are based off of the annual rent schedule from the Florida Housing Finance Corporation's multifamily rental program. And that was utilized as a framework to determine the total dollar amount for those 4 categories. I won't get into details, but they're here for review. They're also provided in your backup information. For the for sale units, that once again is based off of AMI. So those numbers are established by HUD and updated on an annual basis. One thing of note, the highest category, which is referred to as the middle category, that was dropped in 2019. So only projects that received approval prior to that date may have that middle component for workforce housing. So moving forward, we'll only see the low, mod 1, and mod 2 categories. And overall to date, there's been 117 total projects. With that, there have been 28,178 units subject to the workforce housing program. That has accrued to 3,441 workforce housing program units, which is 12% of the total number of all units approved. To date, there's been over 1,500 units completed that have either been rented or that are currently available for rent. There have been almost 230 units sold as far as for sale units, and within the current pipeline, there's over 1,300 that are under construction or have recently been approved. Mostly those are rental units. And then in lieu projects have totaled $29 million, which is roughly 10% of all the units approved. And funds from that in lieu money actually goes to down payment assistance for individuals and families that are trying to purchase workforce housing units. So that money is cycled back into the program that way. So we come to our workforce housing program potential changes. So in June, as Twee described, we had discussions with the board, and we were directed to follow up on certain items, explore them further. Specifically, we were given direction from the board to gather input from stakeholders and return back for further discussion and guidance from the board. Again, as we mentioned, we had our August stakeholders meeting. We sent out invitations through email, as well as providing online information for the meeting to over 400 stakeholders and interested parties. We had a relatively well-attended meeting that was followed by an online survey that was, again, published through our website and available for anyone that wanted to participate. We had 14 responses to that survey, and those responses are shown here. This is not staff's attempt at modern art, I promise. This is more of a heat map to show where there was consensus or not consensus. You can see green showing for a specific item, red against, yellow was neutral, white was non-responsive. So with that, there were 3 major categories that seemed to have some sort of consensus amongst all of the participants in the survey. The first was to expand the program to allow for voluntary participation on projects that had less than 10 units. Currently, there's a 10-unit threshold that would allow participation in the program. So the survey participants wanted to look into that further. Next had to do with reducing overall development costs and regulatory obstacles. And the final that there was consensus on had to do with exploring the possibility of reduced parking for workforce housing projects. So This slide is really a summary of the 13 talking points. Maria will get into some of the details for each talking point specifically. If there are certain items that the board would like staff to pursue further, we can then provide draft language to implement those changes. We'd also communicate with our consultant to make sure that there's no negative impact to the development community, being that there's statutory requirements to ensure that there's kind of an equilibrium as far as the ask and the give for any workforce housing program. So with that, I'll pass it to Maria.
Not
Good
often that there's
afternoon.
3 Marias in the room.
Uh-oh. All right, the first topic of the 13 is this issue of where the program applies. Currently, it applies only in the urban-suburban tier. The board, as was mentioned earlier, the board does apply workforce housing requirements outside the urban-suburban tier by condition of approval for amendments. And the board has instituted the essential housing land use category that requires a substantial amount of workforce housing in the agricultural reserve area. So there are opportunities outside of the urban-suburban tier. But staff's recommendation is that the requirements should apply uniformly across all the tiers where development occurs. That doesn't mean that the units have to be delivered in those tiers, but in terms of uniformity, we think that makes sense. The second topic area has to do with the voluntary participation. As Jeff mentioned, this is a topic on which there was a great deal of consensus, and this is simply to allow an opportunity for developers that are building projects of less than 10 units to be able to take advantage and essentially get a workforce housing density bonus for those projects. Today, they are unable to access that workforce housing density bonus because the projects are too small. So our recommendation is to allow for that to occur. The third has to do with affordability periods. We did a bit of research on affordability periods in place in other counties in the state as well as in other local governments. Frankly, they're very wide-ranging, from 7 years to 99 years, depending on the program and the provisions. Our recommendation here is to consider increasing the affordability period for rentals to the 50 years recommended by the Florida Housing Finance Corporation, but to leave the for sale as is in the 15-year recurring system that is in place now for those rentals. For those for sale units. The next area has to do with annual eligibility determination of tenants in the rental units. Currently, all tenants are certified as eligible at the time of move-in by the property manager. Property managers can choose to, but are not required to, recertify tenants at the time of the lease renewal if the tenant stays in there past a year. The program was designed this way back in 2006 because of concerns expressed by property management industry that it would be burdensome to recertify tenants at every renewal. So the program is that way today. When this topic was discussed by this board in June, there was some interest in changing that to requiring annual certification. And certainly that can be implemented. However, we do want to make you aware of some considerations. First, any recertification requirement would apply to new projects only. The ones that were approved previously under the old code would not be subject to that. They could, again, do it voluntarily, but they would not be required to do so. Secondly, when we do see projects that do recertifications, we often see households that fall out of the bottom of the program. We ask property managers today to work with those households that fall out because their income hasn't kept up to even stay in the lowest category of the program, but they're not required to do so, and we cannot make them do that. So the grace period that the board discussed previously would play an important role there to allow people time to transition to something else. But we do want to point out that there are significantly fewer options available for households with incomes below our workforce housing categories. Also, we see a fair number of tenants that have irregular sources of income, whether it's based on their jobs, whether it's due to their nature of the job, perhaps commission-based or something like that. So we probably would need to look at longer than a one-year look-back period when determining eligibilities to take account of those fluctuations in income. And finally, we want to make you aware of one potential impact on what is basically a fundamental premise of this program. When projects are approved and they have a workforce obligation, that obligation is essentially assigned to what we call buckets, the 4 income categories, or in some cases 2 income categories. With recertification, we cannot predict that those categories will remain the same because there will be shifts among those. So it may be a trade-off that you may be liberating units, but you may not be able to maintain, property managers may not be able to maintain that distribution among those income categories that has been required of them. The next topic is in lieu fees. This board has expressed interest in doing away with the in lieu fee. And staff's recommendation is that that is something that should be looked at in conjunction with the economic consultant for workforce housing. Next topic is the limited incentive option. The limited incentive option is available to developers in the workforce housing program. For projects that use this option, that select this option, their obligation is cut in half, essentially. Not only for any density bonus that they may use, but also for their base obligation based on their land use designation. In exchange, they're required to provide units only in the lowest 2 income categories, and they are limited in the amount of density bonus that they can obtain. So that was the trade-off. They would have a lower percentage applied to them, but units they did provide would be in those lower 2 income categories, and they wouldn't be able to access a substantial amount of density bonus. This option was not part of the program back in 2006. It was added in 2010 at the request of industry as a way to lessen the burden based on economic conditions at that time. So the thought was projects that didn't need to use density bonus shouldn't have the same exaction applied as projects that were seeking density bonuses. So looking at this now, or since 2010, and what has occurred, what we see is that more than a third of our projects use this limited incentive option. Of those projects that use it, 60% actually go the route of the in lieu fee. So we are not getting the units in those lower 2 categories for that percentage of units of projects that choose to use the in lieu fee. So those units are not materializing. And of the projects that select the limited incentive, 38% actually do take a density bonus. So we're not convinced that the limited incentive is working in the way that it was intended. Staff's position is that limited incentive is not necessary, and it works at odds with the purposes of the program because the regular incentive, the full incentive option, already has built in a lower percentage that's applied to the base density. So a project that doesn't want density bonus doesn't have to take it, doesn't encounter that larger exaction. They can stay with just their land use designation and have a low percentage applied. So our recommendation is that the base exaction should be the same for all projects. This is something that, again, we can vet with the county's economic consultant, but that is the reason, the reasoning for staff's recommendation. The next topic has to do with the exchange options. The exchange option was introduced at the request of industry back in 2019. It's up and running. We have 42 units that are rented out currently, and several dozen more in the pipeline as a result of the exchange program. So that's working well. When the exchange option was introduced into the code in 2019, because it was a new program, staff offered 2 sub-options. One for projects that had an exchange partner already in mind and were ready to go, and another for developers that wanted to use the exchange option but did not have an exchange partner in mind or a project in mind. That second sub-option has not been used a lot and is somewhat problematic in terms of these concepts really should be what we call fully baked before those exchanges are accepted as the disposition option for a project. So our recommendation would be to do away with that sub-option, and the exchange program would still be available, but a partner would have to be in place to accept that as a disposition option. The next topic area has to do with the on-site location of units. One of the objectives of the county's program is for the provision of workforce units on-site where that's appropriate. And so staff is recommending that on-site be the default disposition of the workforce units, and that any option to do something different, a different disposition option, would have to be approved as a waiver by the Board of County Commissioners. Next topic, on-site for sale workforce units. So another of the county's objectives has been to increase the number of workforce housing units that are available as for sale units. There have been several different stabs at this, from discounting the obligation as an incentive to get more for sale units done, as well as the multiplier, the 1.5 multiplier that industry requested back in 2019 and is now in place, that basically acts as a disincentive to provide rentals. So many times these topics are discussed in the context of like for like, that a project that's building a for sale project should deliver its units as a for sale unit, for example. When this board discussed this back in June, there was interest in potentially requiring an equivalency that had to do with the number of bedrooms coming out of for example, a project that's building large single-family homes, 5-bedroom, 6-bedroom homes, should deliver some equivalency in terms of the number of bedrooms for the workforce units that it's going to deliver. So the workforce units would not have 6 bedrooms, but the workforce obligation would have to account for all of the bedrooms in the typical home in the market rate project. So we think that this is a concept that can potentially work for the for sale units, but it would require us to change sort of how we do the obligation right now. Right now, at the time a project is approved and we calculate the workforce obligation, and the board or the project is approved with a certain disposition option, we don't know anything about the number of bedrooms that are going to be in the product. And especially true for large projects that may have multiple builders, multiple pods. We don't know anything about the number of bedrooms that are going to be in those units. So it could be done, but it will insert us further along into the development process, and that's just something we want to make sure is understood. So that as those numbers of bedrooms become apparent, we can calculate throughout. With regard to rentals, right now, again, the obligation is calculated by number of units, and we do not prescribe a number of bedrooms. We don't even prescribe specific units within a rental project to say, these over here are the rental units. That was done intentionally so that the property managers would have the flexibility to address the needs of the tenants that were coming in through the door, and be able to make adjustments as needed. The concern is always, oh, well, they're always going to only offer 1-bedroom units. That's not what we're seeing. Right now, more than half of our units in our rental pool are 2-bedroom. We have about 12% that are 3-bedroom, and we have a handful of studios and 4 bedrooms, and we do have 30-some% that are 1-bedroom units. So we do have a range. If it were to change so that a property manager had to make sure to always engage a certain number of bedrooms, it would just be an implementation challenge for the property managers as well as for monitoring on staff's part. If the underlying concern is that we not end up getting just studios or 1-bedroom units, then perhaps a minimum unit size, it would be a way to prevent that and still be more easier to monitor and to enforce. So our staff's recommendation is we can look at it for sale units, but for rentals, maybe a minimum unit size might be the way to go. Separate pricing. This is a topic that we think needs some consideration. Right now, we have a single sales price in each income category, and so the developer typically delivers townhome units at that point. We think if there could be a different price, both above and below the current number, maybe we could see some condo units, maybe we could see, if the price were a little higher on the other end, we might see more single-family units for sale. So we think it's something worth exploring. All right, so the rent schedule and the for sale schedules. Right now, as you know, our program prescribes rents and sales prices that are directly or indirectly tied to area median income. Of course, we have quite a bit of variation throughout the county in different areas. Things fluctuate over time, so we do have, at any given time, in any given area, we do have units that are at or their workforce price will be at or below the market rate for that particular area. That does happen. Question is what to do about it. We've got some different options that we've listed here that we might be able to look at, but in some cases, it would represent a departure from our current tie to that area median income, which everyone agrees on, and the tie to the HUD calculations of those figures that, again, everyone currently agrees on. So there may be something you could do with taking a percentage of that, or maybe something local geographic census data that could help change that, but it would be a departure, and that's just some consideration for you. The next topic is reducing development costs, and this was one of the topic areas on which there was consensus that something should be done to reduce development costs. There was interest in using the in lieu fees for other development costs. That is not something staff is recommending, but there are other things that we think can be done. For example, land development regulation modifications. I know the zoning division is working in that direction. And even exploring model programs with ready plans for developers to use to provide the workforce units to help reduce their costs. And then finally, reduce parking requirements. This is another area in which there was general consensus. Earlier today, you approved the permission to advertise to reduce parking requirements for affordable housing program units. Workforce housing is a little bit different. Everything that we see in the data shows that households in the workforce housing categories have characteristics, car ownership characteristics, mode of travel characteristics that are very similar to higher income households. That's not the case with affordable housing households. They have lower car ownership rates, more likely to ride transit. So we are not recommending any changes at this time to the parking requirements for workforce housing units for that reason. And then finally, we want to bring to your attention a topic that was raised in case it is of interest to the board during the survey, or as part of the survey responses, which has to do with the linkage fee. And that is something that this board has discussed in the past, or prior boards have discussed. And that would be a fee that would be applied to commercial and or industrial development, essentially any employment generating development for the purpose of using those funds to help to facilitate the delivery of additional housing. It's in use in other places in the country. It's not something that prior boards here have had an interest in, but since it was brought up, we wanted to mention it here. There are a lot of different models, a lot of different approaches, so that is something that could be looked at. And with that, we are happy to answer any questions and or get your direction on any particular items.
Okay, do we want to take cards first and then ask questions of what is the pleasure of the board? Cards first. Okay.
Okay, we have 6 cards. Alexandria Larson, Michelle Jacobs, Kevin Rattery, and also Jack Weir, Andrew Chesnick, and Anastasia Colas.
Ms. Larson isn't here, but I think she supports everything we want to do.
I'm sure she does.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, County Commissioners for having us today. Michelle Jacobs, President and CEO for the Economic Council of Palm Beach County. Thank you for the opportunity to speak regarding the Workforce Housing Program and the presented changes to this program. We were surprised to learn that on February 21st, these changes were being proposed and brought forth today after quite a bit of time since the last conversation on this topic. As stated previously by staff, a county stakeholder workshop was conducted on August 14th, and subsequently a survey was sent out. Only 14 responses were received. It seems apparent that the feedback provided in the survey has not been taken into consideration and is not truly reflected in the proposed changes that you're reviewing today. In addition, an updated study should have been conducted in the fall by an outside consultant prior to these proposed changes being brought back to the Board of County Commissioners. The study would assess the impact of all proposed changes to our overall goal of developing additional workforce housing units. As far as the Economic Council is aware, the county has not conducted a study to demonstrate how the workforce housing program works, what the impact the changes being recommended to it would have, and how developers will be fully offset by the workforce housing program obligations being set forth today. This is yet to be explained to the private sector thus far. While some of the 13 items in the proposal we do not object to, there are several items that we would need more detail about first, and there are many items that we have serious negative consequences to the existing program of which we oppose. Without a proper study done by an outside consultant, you will not be able to fully understand the negative impacts these recommended changes will have to the program long term. Additionally, it is not clear what will need to be required to meet the fully offset obligation set forth by state legislative standards as to how the costs incurred by developers of workforce housing under a mandatory requirement will be met. Before you move forward on any of these changes, we respectfully request that you hit the pause button on this and that you direct staff to first conduct a thorough study by an outside consultant to fully gauge the long-term impact these myopic recommendations will have. We fear if these proposed changes are approved to move forward, the negative consequences will be severe and will dramatically impact any new development of workforce housing units of which we are woefully in need. The business community is willing to assist in any way that you might have to get this right.
Thank you. Commissioner Sachs.
Ms. Jacobs, I know you've been here for a while. No, it's okay. You don't need to come up. But I think at the end of our discussion today, I'd like to hear from the business group. As you say, whatever recommendations you could have, I'd like to have some recommendations. Okay? Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Kevin Rattery. I want to be clear that I am not here today speaking on behalf of that small boutique builder that pays my salary every year. I'm here on behalf of the Gold Coast Builders Association. I am a lifetime board member of the organization, and the executive director, Mr. Yates, is here as well. On Monday of this week, you received a letter from the Builders Association. It would be impossible to go through that entire letter in 3 minutes without speaking, so I'm going to do a little Saturday Night Live bit for you called Deep Thoughts. Instead of Jack Handy, they're going to be Deep Thoughts by Kevin Rattery. So first and foremost, let's talk about the state law requirement, because it was skipped over relatively quickly by staff, and you need to understand what the statute says. It says that the county may adopt an inclusionary housing ordinance that requires a developer to either build, set aside, or pay for some affordable housing to be built. The key line, in exchange for a developer fulfilling the requirements of this section, the county must provide incentives to, key phrase, fully offset all costs to the developer. And they can do that utilizing several methods which are outlined. A density bonus, waiving fees, such as impact fees, water and sewer fees, or granting further incentives. So, what does that mean? That means every time the county ratchets up an obligation imposed on the development industry to provide more affordable housing, which is the effect of, or workforce housing, which is the effect of removing the limited density incentive, doubling the requirement on a builder, the county has to offset that cost to the developer. There is nothing before you today which is discussing how that offset is going to occur. There are a lot of projects that come before you that don't request a density bonus. They don't request a density bonus because they may be being built in an area that's primarily single family, and they're coming in with single family. They don't need the density bonus. Yet, the program requires them to provide 2.5% of standard and 8% of PUD, or 5% and 16%, depending on what option they use. There is no offset incentive provided to the county which offsets that cost to the builder. That is why industry is asking respectfully for there to be a study done that shows how these offsets are being done. We've been at the table from the very beginning. Sorry, Madam Mayor.
Okay. We have two lights on. Now, do you have questions of Kevin? Okay. Commissioner Weiss.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Attery. So, and I'm sure there's other things you wanted to cover in your deep thoughts, but
I only got one out.
I only got one. It was a very deep thought, right? So I can only ask you about your first deep thought, but I'm sure, and I would ask you to share others if you have them. But and maybe my question to you really is, it costs X number of dollars to build a unit, and so we're asking you to then provide at least at the minimum right now, the way our inclusionary zoning works, right, one unit for every 10, right? It's about
the average.
Yeah, that's about what we're asking for, unless we're doing a land use change, right? But if it's just a straight development, we're asking for one. So that would mean that, and then at what point, at how much additional density, and I'm assuming that's what the study would show, but I'm assuming you guys know these numbers. At what additional density does it take to offset that one, reduced cost, reduced priced unit?
It's an interesting question because before you get to the premise of how much additional density, the developer has to make the decision of whether or not they even want to request the additional density, because they may be building in an area where you've got NIMBY issues, you've got neighborhood issues, you've got for instance, single-family housing around you, and if you were to come in and try to do a pretty dense townhome product or a multifamily rental product, you would have a room full of people screaming and hollering at you about the density increase. So what we generally have found to be the most successful model for developers that are not asking for density bonus is the exchange.
Right.
And just to give you a representative example, we have two projects in West Boca that were in the urban-suburban tier. You know them as the old Boca Municipal Golf Course, and the Johns property, we know them as Lotus Palm and Lotus Edge. Those two projects had a cumulative exchange cash price to us of $7.7 million and resulted in 145 rental unit obligations that are being built in downtown Lake Worth and downtown West Palm Beach along the US 1 corridor. Commissioner Sachs just borrowing a line from you earlier today, in areas where mass transit and job opportunities are. So we find the exchange to be the best option. And I use that to say, oftentimes it's not the density bonus that dictates the project, it's what you're able to physically get approved through the process.
I'm just sort of, spitballing right now with you, because would it make sense then to what if we created some kind of a density pool or something that you could take somewhere else where it made sense, or you could sell them to somebody else? Would that be something worthwhile to look at?
I mean, that's effectively what the exchange is. You're just
Well-
taking the obligation from this project and you're applying it to another project with a builder that effectively builds in that market space.
Okay, all right. And then I'm going to just open it up to you because I do like Saturday Night Live, and so I want to hear what the other deep thoughts are. Can you share them?
Yes. So let's talk about the discussion about the expansion of the program into the ex-urban, rural, and the agriculture reserve tiers. So you may recall a discussion that occurred around, it's always GL. I don't know why it is always GL, but there's a discussion point. But you may recall a discussion about civic site cash out proposal as part of the Whitworth PUD. And you had representatives from COBRA here and other of the community organizations that were trying to explain to the board that in the Ag Reserve, you already have an essential housing program. So you already have the ability of the developer to do a land use plan change, and that you shouldn't be having the opportunity for additional density in the rural tiers and the ex-urban tiers and the Ag Reserve tiers. If you want to do that, you should create a program similar to the ex-urban tier. We agree with that. We agree with that. Because, again, I think where the county starts to run afoul in this very important issue is the fully offset. And so we've got to figure out a way where industry is meeting its obligation. And I think the numbers that came up here today show that, there's over 3,000 units that have been approved through this program. We're certainly, 7.7 million on 2 projects alone is not a, spit in a bucket. So linkage fees are another thing that is highly controversial because it increases the cost on your office developers, your retail developers, and your industrial developers. At the same time, they're creating the jobs that need the housing space. And so up until the $200 million bond that this county approved, the residential builders were the only ones forced is a harsh word. We're the only ones at the table with our arms behind our back being pulled up tight. How's that? And so having more people at the party to help fund these projects is the best way to go. We like the idea. We believe in the concept of the exchange and having units built in job corridors and mass transit corridors. It makes a lot of sense. So, anything that promotes that, I think, is a good idea. I think the other deep thought that really kind of gets us is there was a lot of discussion about the limited density and the full density, and the limited density recommendation to go away. And it's important for this commission to remember that the limited density is still requiring 2.5% of your standard density, your by right density, and 8% of your PUD density to be set aside as workforce housing. There's not one incentive in your code for those projects. How is that compliant with the state law? So the recommendation of staff is get rid of the program and go to full density incentive. Well, now that 2.5% of standard goes to 5%, and that 8% of PUD goes to 16%. You just doubled the resulting workforce housing obligation. Where is the offset? And so those are the concerns we have, and that's why we as industry are sitting here today saying these are very important concepts, but we need to make sure that what's going forward in terms of the recommendations and the direction, that it's meeting the requirement of the state law, because we don't want to be, we've been participating, we've been collaborative. I don't know that Patrick would agree with that word necessarily, but we've been trying desperately. Patrick and I have been doing this from the very beginning, From 2006 on, we've been doing this, and we're trying desperately to work collaboratively, but we got to make sure the county's doing it in a way that's not financially hurting the industry that's at the table trying to help. Deep thought number 2.
Good? Vice Mayor Baxter.
Thank you, Mayor. Hey, Mr. Rattery, how are you? So I'm actually going to start with the county attorney, if you don't mind. So Darren, with the state law, taking that into consideration, how are we complying with that?
Well, my understanding was that back at the time, the consultant did the analysis and it showed compliance. I understand what Kevin Rattery is saying. I think there seems to be an issue with developers who are not taking any density. And I think that any changes that we make, we're going to have to take to our consultant and analyze that. Absolutely.
So are we currently in compliance with the way our code is?
I would say that we are until we are told otherwise.
Okay. And yes, Kevin.
And I want to clarify something that was just said. The BAE study that was done was based on profitability. That was the financial mechanism, and they were all based on projects that got some form of bonus density. So first off, the standard's not profitability, the standard is fully offset. And second off, the issue is, as Darren correctly put it, your county attorney correctly put it, I apologize for being so informal. The second issue is, what about those projects that don't do density bonus? And those are the projects that the 7.7, well, a chunk of that 7.7 was for a project that came in below permissible PUD density, wasn't asking for a density bonus. So again, we're trying to be helpful, we're trying to be participants in the program, but we need to make sure it's just following the rules.
And I appreciate your input. I'm going to hold any further questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Sacks.
Can I sit
Thank you,
down
Madam
now?
Mayor. SNL was a comedy, but this is damn serious. Because if there's one thing that people talk about and complain about and propose ideas about, it's housing. If we look at automotives, I'm from Detroit, and I know a little bit about cars. 10 years ago, if you said the word Tesla, they might think you're talking about a new refrigerator or something. Our auto manufacturers have kept up with what's going on with gas emissions, the cost of oil, our highways, and what millennials and Gen Z want. Housing has not. Housing has not in this county. And industry, listen up to me, because you need to lead the way. Government does not and should not build housing. You build housing in a way that is profitable. We don't do that. We're not a business. We have to take care of the most vulnerable, and that's why we do get involved in affordability and workforce. But you know what sells, and you know where it sells. It doesn't sell in a pepper field. It sells where there is transit corridors and there's work, and schools, and civic centers, so that we don't have to tell you to build a civic center way out west somewhere. We in the county government need to understand that we need to listen to you, because you operate on a profit margin, and I like that, because you will build only where you can make a profit, and that's where the building should be, and that's the way it should be. That's what you were talking about, Mr. Ryder. So we will make the rules consistent with what is going on in the world today on housing. I hear it all the time. I want golf cart communities, my people say. I'm tired of the traffic. I want a connectivity. Just look at even TikTok has a whole area section on housing the way the kids want it today. And that's what they're going to sell. That's what they're going to buy. So when you build where there's connectivity, where there's places that can go, in a townhouse, go down and get a Starbucks, or there's, I can't remember the name of the new coffee place today, but that's where we need to do. That's where you need to build. That's where we need to help you with incentives, but not tell you where to build or punish you for building certain areas so that it's not profitable. And yes, you're correct. Commercial builders should do the same. And I think I'm seeing that in some of the redevelopment. I won't mention any names, but there's a huge office building that is about vacant, and it's going to be redeveloped. And it's going to include housing, and it's going to include retail and commercial. So I think, and I'm listening to you, and I didn't want to say anything now, but it was so easy. But at the very end of this, I'd like to have your ideas either submitted by paper or somehow so that we in government can understand where you all are finding it profitable to build, how to build those housing, and that we can then assist in making sure that our most vulnerable are taken care of, because that's our job. We don't build. That's your job to build. And so I think this is a great discussion to have today. And I look forward to hearing from industry today at the end. Thank you, Mr. Radke.
Thank you. And who's our next card? Is it Mr. Weir?
I believe so. Jack Weir, speaking on behalf of the Housing Leadership Council of Palm Beach. As Jimmy Buffett would say, there's a thin line between Saturday night and Sunday morning. So this is the more serious part of the presentation. I guess starting with the basics, the workforce housing program is a condition of approval for an individual project. There is no financial subsidy that's involved. There's no gap financing. There's no fee waiver associated with it. So what the offsetting quotes is bonus density. We believe that the thrust of the changes is basically we want more on-site housing, we want more for-sale housing, and we are going to make you, development community, do it. The obvious issue is we're operating in an environment where the big three, construction costs, interest rates, and insurance, have all gone up markedly in the last 5 years. They're not lower for workforce housing units. They're not lower because the rents on those units are. They are the costs. So when you increase the cost of the workforce housing, you basically make the hurdle higher for a project to proceed at all. And you, on the county commission, don't really get to see the projects that never move forward because that hurdle rate was too high. With regard to the specific changes, the in lieu payments, if the goal is to reduce them so that it's not utilized as much as an option, the way to do it is with incentives and with options. The incentive is lower workforce housing percentage if the housing is provided on site, which is something that the staff has looked at. And the other is the exchange program. The essence of the exchange program is to take the county out as a middle person so that you have, say, a home builder with a workforce housing obligation and you have a workforce housing developer. You basically bring them together and they provide the needed gap financing. The county isn't involved except as a backup by requiring a letter of credit if the units aren't ever built. I would like the staff to revisit that number on 42 exchange units because that seems very low compared to what we've looked at as well. So we're opposed to any limitation that would make the exchange program harder to use because the timing of the project with the obligation and the project that needs the funds don't always match up exactly. That flexibility is key to making it work for both parties. As Ms. Bello noted, annual compliance raises a lot of questions, and the county has to think hard if they want to force someone to leave a unit because they got a pay raise and they're now over income for that unit as well. So if I could continue for just a couple more minutes? Sure. And then the affordability period is from Florida Housing, which provides a subsidy, a very substantial subsidy in terms of tax credits as well. Again, no financial subsidy here. So you've asked what are some of the things that would make the program better. So one of them is bonus density is floated out. But I should point out that on a rental project, the bonus density isn't provided as a matter of right. You'll see in your letter where we've proposed these. You as a developer have to purchase TDRs, transferable development rights. So the cost of those are only $1,000 for the workforce units, which are approximately a third of the bonus density, but there's $30,000 a unit for the market units that are on top of your base density. So if you add $30,000 to $50,000 for the land cost, your project isn't very feasible. So that's one issue. The staff has also had a requirement that any project requiring a land use change, it's 25% workforce housing requirement. So that's not in the ordinance, it's not fixed. You as a developer can come back and say at the end of the process, after you've spent $1 million on due diligence and pre-development costs, can you please reduce the workforce housing requirement so my deal is feasible? In our industry, we call that $1 million lottery ticket. Maybe you'll get it, maybe you won't. And the percentage of projects that require a land use change, it's the overwhelming majority. Palm Beach County's zoning in the unincorporated parts of the county is historically low relative to the level of commercial development. The other thing is, you've talked about the in lieu fees. The in lieu fees are only used to provide assistance for sale workforce housing units generated by this program, 229 units over 19 years. So that means that the money has accumulated in there, and the last count that I saw was 18 million. I don't know if that's still the case. What we've suggested in the housing plan is that money be used for a permanent source of second mortgage financing for sale projects for which the construction financing is done through the bonds. As the county attorney knows, you cannot use bond proceeds for permanent mortgages for sale housing. So you use it for construction, it becomes a revolver, it's paid off, but the developer needs some assurance that there'll be a takeout. We've suggested permanent lieu fee would be perfect.
Hold on one second, Jack.
So I love a lot of your ideas. There's no way I'm going to be able to write them down and remember them all. Have you
in the letter.
Sent them on the bullet points in the letter? And so the Housing Leadership Council has sent all these recommendations to us, correct?
Yes.
And so one of the things, has staff taken a look at these and considered them when providing us recommendations? Pat?
So both letters that we received were after our report had been submitted, after we gave you the backup. I think a lot of those points were those that were raised in the meeting as well. There's a lot more specificity in some of these letters, and that's kind of why we're here too, to blend some of those recommendations with what you're hearing from us and what the board may or may not want to direct to pursue to look at.
I guess I would have just liked some more cooperation between the two parties, the outside parties and staff, before bringing us recommendations, so that, because to Commissioner Sachs's point, we are not building these homes, and we are not the experts in this field. So I think that could have been very useful, and now here we are making these decisions, and yes, we get letters, but if we don't have enough time, and everyone knows I love to read, and I love to dig in, but sometimes there's not enough hours in the day to read every single thing put in front of us. So, I mean, we kind of rely on staff too to also participate in this research of what's best for our residents. So what I'm asking is this even something we should be giving our recommendations on today without having everyone fully come together on this topic and have some sit-down conversations about it?
We would be happy to take any direction from the board. I would note both of these letters were dated February 24th. The backup went out a week in advance, so a week ago. So a few days after that, if it was the board direction to meet again, to meet with industry and go through these points and further refine, we can do that as well.
I don't think there's any harm in letting you finish, Mr. Ware.
I'll wrap it up very
And
shortly.
hearing the rest of it, but I'm just asking these questions because there's a lot of, I think, great recommendations, a lot of useful information of how we can better help everyone. The developers, get the residents some units on the ground, everyone benefits, and be in compliance with Florida statute. There has to be, I think, some further
Mr.
conversation.
Ware, if you
so.
could wrap it up. We have a couple more cards, and then it sounds like the consensus and the feeling from the board here is that there needs to be a little bit more work. And there needs to be, because, yes, and Patrick, yes, the agenda went out a week ago. They responded 3 days ago. But, and we're not experts in the field, so to ask us to make recommendations as non-experts, I don't think that's correct. So, Mr. Ware, if you would quickly finish up, because we do have some more cards, and then we can, Commissioner Powell, do you have a question for Mr. Weir or a comment?
Thank you, Mayor.
Question or comment for Mr. Weir or a comment?
Both.
Okay.
I think the question, let's point out something Mr. Weir said, but the question and comment comes in terms of, I heard him say that $18 million over the time period that we've had the fee in lieu is sitting there. And the question I have for, I guess, our staff is, I thought in the presentation there was an indication that these fees were used for down payment assistance. If the fees are taken for down payment assistance, how is $18 million still there?
So it's home buyer assistance, correct. That fund fluctuates greatly because the product that's available in the workforce program, we have no way to predict when those units would come online. I can tell you about 4 or 5 years ago, we had a strong run of them and a lot of home buyer assistance was utilized to bring a number of units home. So it's not a consistent stream at all. It's very unpredictable, but it's necessary when for sale units do become available because notwithstanding the prices that we're able to charge, assistance is needed.
Follow-up.
Sure.
If the fee in lieu is for the inclusionary zoning ordinance, why aren't we using that money to develop units? And I know the fee in lieu is way less than it is to construct a new unit. So for me, I'm trying to piece these things together in my head and it's not connecting.
You're correct 100% that the in lieu fee does not pay for the construction of a new home. Your question, why is the money not utilized? That's never been board policy to use it for, going back to the creation of the fund. I can tell you that, until 2012, 2013, it had a balance of about $2.5–3 million as the program rode through the recession. But we've also, hit a period of time where I don't think we've had too many projects in the past few years that have utilized in lieu. Could it be used for other sources? Yes, I'd want to do a little more work and look at it, but understand it sounds like a lot of money that's out there, and I'm not dismissing $18 million, don't get me wrong, but that's one time, and how far that goes and having money available for home buyer assistance when units do become available has been very, very important in putting people in homes.
Madam Mayor, if I could respond to Commissioner Powell's question. So the recommendation we've made is to broaden the pool of eligible for sale products so that any project, any home that's being part of a workforce housing program, it could be financed through bonds, it could be financed through others. The goal is not to have the in lieu fee pay the whole cost of development, it's to play gap financing, where you'd have a conventional first mortgage, you may even have some down payment assistance, but the gap between the cost to build it and the sale price, that would be where we would recommend using the in lieu fee.
Thank you. With regard to that, the nexus between creating a fee in lieu or having the developer develop units at the cost on site, affordable units or workforce units, whatever they're developing. I'm not understanding why the disconnect. If there's a nexus of, if we're going to allow you not to build on site the units that would be either affordable or workforce, then I would think that rationally the amount of money paid into the fee would be an amount would be capable of constructing units or just build the units.
So
It's
the
just not connecting.
difficulty for a scattered for sale off-site is the home builder, in many cases, or a developer overall, has an obligation. And then how do they satisfy that obligation if they want to use the exchange program? It's difficult to come up with the timing. And again, the staff recommendation is to reduce the time frame here. The timing to gather that is very difficult. So when we designed the exchange program, we said, well, if you're not doing for sale, you have to provide more units. And the ratio that we agreed upon with the staff was 1.5 rental units. It's easier to aggregate a single rental site and make the timing work and provide the requisite number of units than doing what would probably be a scattered site for sale off-site project. So that's how that has evolved.
Good? Good?
Okay. Last recommendation, there have been a number of compliance issues with the workforce housing program. The staff has moved to address those. But the inherent issue is it's a condition of approval. Unlike housing and economic development, where they dispense dollars, they monitor it, and they do compliance, planning isn't really built to do long-term compliance of workforce housing. So what we've recommended is simplify the program. Right now, you have 8 tiers. You have sub-tiers with each of the 4, 80, 100, 120, 140. What we've recommended is that you eliminate the middle income tier, the 120 to 140 for housing. That's generally going to be above market now in most places in the county. So you have 3 tiers, eliminate the sub-tiers. Each one is a third 80, a third 100, a third 120. So I guess the last note here is no developer has an obligation to build in Palm Beach County. Many of us work in multiple counties throughout the state. At the same time, it's our home county. We desperately want to see this program succeed. So that's what these recommendations are, to actually facilitate the production not only of all types of units, but especially workforce housing units. Thank you.
Commissioner Weiss.
Real quick, Mr. Ware. I know this is something that you study a lot. Is there a program that in another jurisdiction that you think very highly of?
No, because the model that's often cited are places like Montgomery County in Maryland and others. They're highly prescriptive, and they basically are relying on very high sale prices and purchase prices in Metro DC to cross-subsidize it. So I don't think it's applicable. And, you know, we're forging some new ground here. The bond program is one of a relatively few bond programs in the country for housing. While I would love to have guidance and say there's the guiding star, I think a lot of this we have to forge on our own.
So then let me dig in a little deeper with you on this. So are there portions of other jurisdictions, programs that you think are best in class or that we should be looking at?
I think there are alternative approaches. Some jurisdictions do housing trust funds. So they may collect 10, 15, 20 million a year, and that's what they put out. We were hoping the bond program, when we chose that option, would have more impact, and there'd be the ability to recycle the proceeds, and that we'd be able to demonstrate success on a large scale, and hopefully that would facilitate things in the future. So, I mean, there's a number of approaches, and, you know, the inclusionary zoning program, we're not strictly an industry representative, although we have industry representatives on our board. But our goal is to try and make this program and the bond program work and to increase our production levels there.
Okay. So there's really nowhere else to go. We got to figure this out ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Orange has a housing trust fund, Broward has a housing trust fund, and I think I
And your
lost my
time is
mic.
up.
Yeah, my time is up. Stop.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Who's next? I've lost count.
We have Andrew Chesnick and Anastasia Colas.
Hello, Madam Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, Commissioners, Andrew Chesnick with
Hold
the
on one
Related
second.
Group.
Are both mics sound out?
What about the other one?
Well, they're both on.
These are both on. Try that again.
Check.
There you go. Thank you.
Well, that sounded better.
Gotcha. All right, thank you. Madam Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, Commissioners, thank you. Andrew Chesnick with the Related Group. You all know our background. We're one of the largest affordable workforce housing developers in the state. We support dialogue to facilitate activities and seek solutions that are equitably balanced. In that regard, you all are aware we have a project that addresses some of Commissioner Sachs's observations about being near infrastructure, addressing the facility that reduces need for traffic and addresses parking. That is Transit Village.
I don't think we should be talking
That
about a
project is
project
stalled.
that is
And
in
we hope
litigation
that-
at the
that
moment,
you all
Mr.
will take it under
Chesney.
advisement to help move that process along. Thank you very much.
There was one more card.
Yes, Anastasia Colas.
You want to reset the clock? Do we
Okay.
have- That's it. Patrick. Oh, sorry. Come on up. Oh. Hi there, go ahead and start talking.
Is there any way I could display an image of a document or? No? Okay, sorry. All right, hello, my name is Anastasia Colas, and I've lived in Palm Beach County the majority of my life. I've gone to schools here, I grew up here, this is where I'm from, and I'm coming today to actually bring up an alarming issue that is becoming bigger and bigger by the day and year. Cybercrime in Palm Beach County has skyrocketed in the last...
I'm going to ask you a question. The cards that we've collected today are on this particular item about housing. Is that what you're here to talk about?
Part of the project I'm looking to bring up includes one reference to housing, but it's going to come up a little bit later. I had tried coming to one of the other meetings before. I think one was canceled on Tuesday, and I missed the other public meeting. So
which would be March 11th at 2 o'clock, would be the next public comment meeting. Because right now this is a discussion on a procedure we're trying to do for affordable housing. This is not a discussion about cyber crimes or something that is not on that topic.
Okay.
If you have something that you would like to have us get copies of, you can give a copy to these young ladies, and they can make a copy for us. And this way, when you come back on March 11th at 2 o'clock, which is matters by the public, which is something that is stuff that's not on our agenda, then we'd be happy to talk to you.
Okay. I could do that. I do want to also state, I wasn't just going to talk about cyber crime, but also a response that also could lead to...
I think so. Can I have someone from staff chat with this young lady? Because we're talking on a different issue than what you're talking about. And we're doing business today on housing and some background for how we're going to do our housing program. What you're coming to us with is not something that we're talking about right now, but we're going to have one of the folks in our staff talk with you and see if there's something that we can help you with.
Okay, all right.
And you're going to talk to the boss.
Okay, I apologize.
No worries, no need to apologize.
There was a project I was hoping to reference that would actually connect to housing, but I guess
Let's hear about what's referencing the housing.
What would be, thank you, what would be referencing the housing?
You're going to laugh at me, but I actually was looking to address cybercrime by utilizing a concept called FEH, which would look into all issues surrounding American
No,
society.
I'm sorry, that's not what, we're not talking about that today.
Okay. And housing would actually be addressed in that as well.
Okay.
It wouldn't just be like, oh, cybercrime.
Please chat with,
Okay.
the young lady right behind you is our administrator, Ms. Baker, and she will guide you in what you're looking to have questions on at the moment.
Oh, okay. All right, then. I do apologize.
Oh, no worries. We're hoping we can get some help for you.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. Okay, so that brings it back to us. And the board itself has the letter from the Gold Coast Builders with their, yes, we like this, no, we don't like this, we accept this change, we don't like this change. We also have the housing leadership letter. And we as a board could sit here all day and debate, but I think what we need to do is we need to see a little bit more dialogue. And if you all would like to meet with the board members individually, I think that might be something that can be done. I don't think we are ready for prime time right now. And I know, we don't mean to keep kicking this can down the road. And, when everyone says, let's ask for a study, if we're going to ask for another study, we need to find out before we ask for a study, how much is that study going to cost? Because all these studies we ask for are not in our budget. So I feel like we're going into this with our hands behind our back. And I'm not sure that we are prepared at this moment to make any decisions up here. Comments from the board? Commissioner Sachs.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think what you said was very relevant. But I think what we've done today is opened up a good discourse between industry and government. And I think now the next step, as our staff's done a lot of work, I think it's up to business to connect with our government staff and come up with some proposals. They mentioned in the very beginning they have recommendations. So maybe they could meet with staff and together, let's get some proposals together, presented to us, and then we have something to discuss. That's what I would propose anyways, very simply.
Thank you. Commissioner Woodward. You want to go to Vice Mayor? Come back?
Yeah, sorry, I just put him off
Go ahead.
one that's in. Go ahead.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. And just to clarify, I'm going to repeat something I've previously said, but a lot of the suggestions, I would like staff to clearly reach out to the Housing Leadership Council and really go through each one of the recommendations. They're really, really good recommendations, and see if we can work with them to get these implemented, very specifically their recommendations, and see is there any way our county policies do not fit with these recommendations, but as long as they can comply, and if you don't agree with them, please bring back to us why you don't agree with them. But they're very valid recommendations. I guess my only question really would be, is there anything additional we would need to do as far as like a receive and file, put these on the record? How would you like to address that?
From staff perspective, I don't think you need to do that at all. We understand your direction. We'll set up another meeting with industry, go through the letters that we have, what you have here, hear your point, try and coalesce around those ideas.
Okay, and again, I'm going to bring these to the next meeting we have. And I want to hear if there's some reason why these can't be done or there's a better way to do it, please bring those back. Thank you, everyone.
Commissioner Woodward.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for stepping ahead there. I was munching. So I did receive the letters and I was trying to compare them, and because we have the Gold Coast Builders and the Housing Leadership Council, the two letters. And I agree, it would be helpful because I was trying myself to compare, because I'm not even sure that you guys agreed with each other 100% and obviously didn't agree with staff. So to have kind of a chart basically with where we are, what the recommendations of each of you are, plus staff recommendations, and then kind of giving us the ability to have the discussion. Because on some of these, item number 2, the voluntary workforce housing for less than 10 units, everyone's in agreement. There's a couple of these that everyone's in agreement on. And so, that would be helpful for us to move this forward. And I'd be happy to have a joint meeting with you guys to kind of go over this in my office before we come back to this, just because, some of the agreement, it's close. It's a little more nuanced on some of these items, and it would be helpful to have the discussion on how we really land this together, because this was a big one. It's 13 items on here, and not all of them are huge changes, but some of them would be, a bit of a change to the plan, a big change from 2006, not changes that haven't been made. So I would appreciate contacting my office if we could. When would we expect this to come back? Do we?
Definitely not March 11th.
What? For a lot of reasons.
For a lot of reasons.
We're going to be well into the spring. By the time we set something up in the industry, it might require 2 meetings actually to go through and kind of go away and come back, or spring, early summer.
Since these are recommendations, could it not be, forgive me, could it not be a workshop?
We can set it up that way as well. A lot of it's scheduling, just trying to fit things in as best we can. Take note of that, and we'll get back to you as quickly as we can once we've set things up.
I have zero preference if you, Commissioner Woodward.
I don't. I just would like to make sure that I have time to talk to all of you, because I have my own perspective on some of this that might not even match what any of these 4 are. And I'm sure the rest of us also have some of these ourselves. So when we come back, we're better prepared for us to really have this discussion amongst ourselves after sitting with all the parties. And, I read these letters, but again, trying to compare what both of you wanted with what staff was recommending, it got to be over. I needed a conversation with everybody. So I'm asking for that. Hopefully, if we do this by April or May, that should give plenty enough time, I would think. March is going to be cutting it close, but April or May, I would be happy with bringing this back.
Commissioner Powell and then Commissioner Weiss. Oh, okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just back into the presentation and looking for, this is our biggest challenge, housing in Palm Beach County. And, I think we agree as a board that we'll do everything possible to make sure that we address this and mitigate the situation that we're currently in. Back to the...
Bobby, speaking to the microphone.
Can you hear me now?
Speak into the microphone. Come
Thanks.
closer to the microphone. There you go.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to point out, this is our challenge. It's our biggest issue, one of the biggest issues at least. We got 1,548 rented or available units for rent that were completed under the workforce housing program to date. 229 for sale units. I would love to see that increase, in us working on creative solutions to increase the amount of for sale housing. In terms of the presentation, only 14 responses to the online survey. It's a real challenge in terms of the number of responses. I think we can do better in terms of getting people to respond or getting more responses to that survey. And also, when we did the presentation, it looks like the results of the survey, the August 2024, the sheet that was indicated looked like an artwork, the yellow, green, and pinkish chart. I can't see that. I don't know what it is. So if we can kind of break that down in a manner that's more available for us to understand, or at least if we're going to put it in the presentation, be able to tell what it is, that would be helpful. And then, I want to thank the stakeholders as well as staff for working to come up with some solutions. Like Commissioner Woodward, I would like to, further this conversation, perhaps having a meeting in my office to really discuss these issues as well. And that's it. In the microphone for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Vice Mayor Baxter.
Thank you, Mayor. I think Commissioner Powell pretty much covered it. I was just going to reiterate that I love the idea of having it a chart with the different industries' recommendations and bringing that back to us with staff and then the separate ones, because it lets us see it much more clearly and hopefully in large enough boxes for us to read. So that is greatly appreciated. April timeframe, also sounds like enough time, and I would like industry to also please reach out to my office. I don't know if the other commissioners agree, but I would like to have that same meeting with everyone and really have that conversation and really dig into this, because this is an important issue. So thank you.
Thank you. Greg, is your light is still on. Are you done?
You didn't call me.
Sorry? Commissioner Weiss?
I just assumed,
No. Feels like we've been all over the board today, so.
That's okay. It's nothing. I don't take it personally. Has been pointed out to me, we had a workshop on this in August, and so I'd like to move this forward. I don't want to see it delayed, so that we want to remove the impediments to this being more successful. But I also have concerns that we heard from industry today, especially as it relates to compliance with state law and making sure that we, and I appreciate our attorney's advice, but I also believe I'd rather preempt being caught in a situation and make sure that we're taking care of that. Just, I looked at, the $18 million of the in lieu fees. If you were to And I know there's a lot of different opinions about how all of this on our board, but if you took that at $40,000 a unit, that's 450 units we could help gap finance tomorrow. So I think that needs to, that conversation, or that we really need to figure that out, because we could help support additional units being built. But I don't disagree with anything that has been said by my colleagues at this point, and so I will close my comments.
Thank you. So I will close with comments, and one of the comments that I heard actually was about the linkage fee, and I actually, while that may not be something that is welcome, I don't see why the job creators and the employers are not part of this program. I do agree with what Mr. Rattery said about that. The job creators should be participating in some way. And everyone needs to be at the table, not just the home builders. So I would ask that all of you, as I said earlier, meet with the individual commissioners, bring your proposals. And as Mr. Weir said, there is no perfect solution to this. Otherwise, you'd all be bringing us an example of a perfect solution. So there isn't one. So this is always going to be a work in progress. We're always going to do something, and the industry is always going to say we're not doing it right, and we're not doing it well enough, or we're not giving enough density bonuses, or whatever it is. And yes, everyone needs to walk away from the table, as Commissioner Powell said earlier, a little unhappy. But we do need to do something better than what we're doing now. And I thank staff for doing what they're doing, because this is not an easy task for anybody. And it's definitely not an easy task for us making decisions when we are not experts in this field at all. And when we talk about linkage fees and we talk about in lieu fees and all of that other, all of us here have different backgrounds, and building may not be one of those backgrounds. Banking may not be one of those backgrounds. So if we don't understand it, or if we need more information about it, can you imagine what other people feel? So we need a better education. We need industry and more than just industry to come into our offices and sit down, give us an ample amount of time, and for us as board members to give you ample amount of time. But we also need staff to be able to say why they think something is working the way it should, or why they think, as Vice Mayor Baxter said, you all have to plead your cases for this to go forward and for us to make any decisions in the future. So as soon as you all meet with us, and then we can put a date on the calendar and say April or May, then I think we move it forward then. So since there is no action from the board other than what we've just talked about, I think we're done with actually what our agenda items are today, except for wrapping this meeting up. Is that correct?
Mayor, just one question to clarify.
Certainly.
The mention of linkage fees when we return in May. Would the board like background on a linkage fee and just the
Please.
framework of what it means, how it can work, just that overview piece of it? Okay, we will include that.
Thank you. All right, so we are at the end of our regular agenda. Do I have any comments from our county attorney?
No comments.
Our planning director? Our zoning director?
No comments.
Our executive director?
Yes, hi. I just wanted to let you all know that in addition to thanking staff, of course, what a wonderful job they did today. And then next month, we'll be bringing back to you an update on our code compliance team and the changes that have been made that we talked to you about last year, just to give you an update on that. And then also to give you a heads up that our RFP for our technology will be going out next month. We're very excited about that, and we're hoping to get new and improved land management software and so that we can help our customers and our staff to be more efficient in operations. So we're very excited about that.
Good to hear.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. All righty, commissioners. Commissioner Sachs, any comments for the board?
Thank you so much, Madam Mayor. First, I want to thank our staff. You put a lot of work into this. This is a very, on housing, it's a very complex issue. And when you come back, after you've digested what industry has to say, make sure that, that we include commercial industry as well as housing industry. I have a couple of statements. One is, I'd like to review the development order monitoring and time extension provisions in the ULDC, and this is to staff, to present an overview discussion to our Board of County Commissioners. And part of the review would be to look at prohibited uses such as institutional uses and the agricultural reserve west of State Road 7, and present to the board for discussion. Originally, I said March, but I think we're a little loaded in March, maybe April or May would be more appropriate. And
Mayor.
would this need to be?
Can I have a?
I just wanted to add.
I want clarity on what that was.
Sure, just one second.
The monitoring direction that I think we'd gotten that on a previous date, and we actually delivered that presentation today. That was on the monitoring and the time extensions. The prohibited uses west of 441, we actually are planning to bring back to the board in March.
Excellent.
So we'll bring that back too. Okay.
Took care of that. The second one I have is, and I'm going to read it. Due to the enormous development activities in the AGR and the lack of adequate public facilities, before we can move too far along, I'd like to direct staff to review and develop a draft scope of work and potential cost for a comprehensive study of the area to include, and I have a number of issues here, and I will go slowly, housing needs that would complement the AGR area, uses that support the needs of the residents of the Ag Reserve, such as mixed use, hotels, entertainment establishments, institutional, personal, and community-oriented businesses, to focus on specific challenges such as traffic, water and sewage, drainage, given the physical constraints of the area, and to prepare an inventory of projects that are built, approved, and potential undeveloped parcels, an inventory of existing privately and public/county-owned preserves and allowable uses/activities within them, engaging all stakeholders in building consensus to identify any potential policy and code changes. However, while staff is working on this, I'd like to suggest a formal pause be enacted for privately initiated comprehensive plan, FLU, and text amendments. This will ensure the integrity of the study and the timelessness by which this can be done, since staff will not be reviewing and making recommendations on these types of applications in the tier.
I think this goes to what we were talking about previously, where we were going to ask, we were going to give direction. It was going to be on the consensus of the board. And if there was anything that was going to have a fiscal impact before we did that, we were going to know what the fiscal impact was, because again, this is not in our budget. Again, this is asking for a study that is not budgeted. So I go, Commissioner Vice Mayor Baxter.
Let me first respond to you, if I could, Mayor, because I think that part of this contemplates what cost would be involved in this study. And before it would proceed, we would need to know and approve the cost first. So, and this is why I looked at you when I read that particular sentence, because, and I agree with you, before any review would be made, there would need to be a cost analysis and review and approval by the board before that occurs. So I hope I'm answering your concern, and I certainly,
Because
I certainly
you've given
agree
staff
with
a
you.
lot of work, and staff time is also expensive, and I don't mean expensive that it's coming out of our pocket additionally to our budget, but it keeps them from other things that they may also be doing that is their time is needed for. So what you've listed here is not brief at all. This is a lot of work by a lot of people. You are aware of that, I'm sure.
I think that probably the best group to ask would be staff, because I think this would be very helpful. I think that part of this should be a response from staff. It gives them a pause to review what's there, what we need to do. But before anything is done, we would, in the board, know what the cost is and review and approve it at that time. But this gives the staff a little breathing room to review all these projects that have been put forward. So I think probably the right group to ask would be staff.
Okay, before we do that, Vice Mayor Baxter and then Commissioner Woodward.
I was going to comment on my recollection of board direction prior to today. We did give direction about clarifying when we're giving direction so that everyone is aware. We never discussed limiting direction based on costs, and I think we all try to be very fiscally responsible. So I think that Commissioner Sachs is being more than gracious and saying that she would like us to have that cost analysis brought back to us about the study she is asking for this board to approve, but that has not previously been the practice of this board. And because we are moving forward and we have a lot of other things going on, I also don't like the idea of limiting. I mean, we have staff at the county, so we as commissioners can have information to make the best decisions. Period, end of story. Without informations, we cannot make, without some studies, we cannot be informed to make the best decisions for our residents. So when it comes to a dollar amount linked to information and saying you can't have information because it costs too much, I disagree. That is literally why we are here, to be informed, to make those decisions, to represent our constituents. So there's many things I can't, I'm going to stop my comments there. But what I will say is that I do like the idea of having this information brought to us. I do like the information so that we can make informed decisions. I do agree that some of it we are already addressing, that is coming back, so that's nice. But at the end of the day, I don't agree with limiting information that we as commissioners get.
I never said anything about limiting information. It's just that we, as a board, sometimes give direction that is a bit unwieldy. We need to know what it is that we're asking for. I'm not telling anybody to not do research. You of all people know that I'm the person up here that reads everything. You of all people know that. And I'm always asking for information. I don't want to burden staff with things that may not be necessary. And if they are, we'll find out they are. Information is always key to making a decision. But we have gotten unwieldy in board direction, and you can see that in the board directions that our administrator has to administrate and that staff has to administrate. We need to put a little bit of a hesitation on that so they can catch up with all the other board directions that they've gotten from us previously. And that's my position. Yes, we're great at giving board direction, but then the more we give direction and the more we ask staff to do, the less prompt we're going to get the things we've already asked for. That is my comment. That is why I have brought this up for discussion. That's why I brought it up for discussion a while back. We never did have a resolution of how we were going. That was going to be another topic brought back to us because we did say, what are we going to do about board direction? So, Patrick.
To that point, the board moved that item. It will be coming back to you to discuss on whatever changes you might make to your rules at March 11th, on the March 11th regular meeting. If it's the board's pleasure as it relates to this, minimally, we can come back with the cost estimate. I think that's been a question and a concern along the way. I would never represent that it would be an 100% accurate number by any means, and I would want to talk to procurement, but I think the board would want to know how much any given study might be as a ballpark number. You might remember we had an amendment a few years ago where we brought in a consultant to review and analyze a specific aspect of it. Talked and shared that. We did that very quickly. That was in the $80,000, $90,000 range. A study of this sort will be significantly more than that, but if it's the board's pleasure, I'd want to be able to at least represent to you a ballpark idea of what it is, and then work with the county administrator and how we could potentially budget it if it came to it.
And that's important because we are, looking at the budgeting process going forward, and we need to, if it's a line item budget that says board direction, we're setting aside $10 million for board direction, then that's one thing, then we know we have it covered. But these are things that, the more we ask for, and it's only $100,000, it's only $1 million, you do that 10 times and you're up to $10 million, which may not sound like a lot with a $9 billion budget, but it is still. We just gave the sheriff $20 million and got rid of that whole reserve. So I think we need to be just a little bit more diligent. Commissioner Woodward.
Thank you, Mayor. And I guess we South County commissioners think alike on this. I would just like you to know I've been having similar conversations with staff on this very issue, and I sent a letter to all of you yesterday. I was going to be requesting something similar.
Started with you then.
No, and that there has been discussions about what this process would be like, and I had written to you about requesting that staff bring back, I'm just going to read it, a concept for the scope of work and a rough cost estimate for a consultant to assess what has been built, what is approved, and to identify the remaining unentitled land. The goal of this study would be to develop a conclusive chapter for this unique area. So this would be, asking them to kind of look at what would it take for us to hire a third-party consultant, or is this something they could do? I think we both have been in discussions about this, and even just trying to, we have these land use issues coming to us constantly, but what's still unencumbered? Where are the TDRs? What is all of this? And to kind of help us wrap this thing up. So I would support and agree that we need this done, and but we're asking for the financial impact on it, because I think we would need to hire a consultant to look at this and be able to give us the full understanding of what's still in this area, what can be, what should be. So I'm in support of her, and if that's similar into the board direction on how do we move this forward, but let us know what the cost would be and what would be involved.
If I may, for the past 22 years, I have been the person to do that data and analysis that you're speaking of. There was 3 things that Commissioner Sachs mentioned. One is an inventory. That would be something that we have the skills and ability to do in-house. It just takes time. The second thing that would be worthy of a consultant is to an analysis of the policies and any changes. That would be consultant worthy. And the third thing is a pause. That's a policy decision by the board, whether or not you decided to put a hold on future land use amendment applications or a moratorium, which has been done previously, but it's not typically a preferred route while you're working on different projects. But I would recommend, considering that I've done the GIS work and data and analysis for the Ag Reserve for 22 years, that you address this in 3 phases, allow staff time to do an assessment. We do it every single time you see that slide that says the word snapshot. I made that. So give me some time to make that, or to teach other people for when I retire that they can do it without me. Give us a month, 2 months or so. Let us do that snapshot before you. We'll have those acreages. We'll have the units. We'll have the what happened to 14,000 cap that we thought we were doing and all of that. So I would suggest you approach it in that manner. Let us do the inventory. We do it every time we do an Ag Reserve presentation anyway. That's just a housekeeping thing. Let us do that and then talk about the next phase of the Ag Reserve if you'd like. That's what I would suggest.
I think all of us here would like to see closure on the Ag Reserve one way or the other. So I am not, Commissioner Sachs, I am not against a study. I'm not against the study.
And I thank you for that. This is why we have a Board of County Commissioners, so we can discuss this. And I think it's a good and lively discussion. And I think a lot of it is generated by staff. I mean, they have been through a lot. And understanding all these different parcels that make up Palm Beach County. And this is a sort of a complicated area. And I like the idea of the pause. I like the idea of, and I received this talking to members of our staff, senior members, not senior in terms of, but senior in terms of years here. But certainly it is something that needs to have a pause, needs to have a review. And I think we all agree with that. And I know that many of us who work in this area know that they need to just step back, take a look at the inventory, and take a look at what we have, what we need to do. And I certainly support staff in that. And I would hope that my colleagues would as well. But I understand what you're saying, Mayor.
Well, I also have other lights were on, Commissioner Weiss and then Vice Mayor Baxter.
I just wanted to throw in, and Lisa, pretty much said what I was going to say, but we've had presentations over the years on the Ag Reserve and what, the inventory and what's out there, and we've had, and in fact, there was few years ago, we had a study come up and talk about, potential, what was needed. So my is if you guys could pull those old presentations maybe and send them out again, at least until we get caught. Everybody, I know, and I don't have any objections coming back as your request or both of your requests. But let's get a cost on what a new study is going to cost us. But in the meantime, we have previous data, and it's not that old, and we haven't encumbered or entitled that much more. But I think it would be a great starting point. Start from there and then build on that.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Oh, a couple comments that I heard about staff being overburdened, and we give a lot of direction, and there are 7 of us, and we keep hearing that over and over. And I guess my question is, do you have enough staff? Yes, I'm asking you, Lisa. Do you have enough staff?
We have, in the zoning division, we have positions we can't fill because the Canadians aren't coming anymore. We used to hire college kids, just out of Canada, all the time. And I don't know if it's warmer up there or if they're not coming. So we have multiple vacancies we just can't fill. So we're always struggling in the zoning division to keep up. We have the positions, we just don't have the people.
And sometimes we can't hold on to people because we are not competing with the private sector, which we've heard, I can't even tell you how many times. But then what that forces us to do, even when you are as capable as you are, is pulling together information, we are then forced to look towards consultants or outside parties to fill in those gaps, which is even way more expensive than my personal opinion, is paying people to stay here and keep them and retain them for longer. And so one of the issues I have is we as a board, I don't think should be hindered on asking for information because of staffing. Either we need to find a way to hire more staff, or we're gonna have to spend dollars on consulting firms to get us the information that's required for us to do our jobs. We can't just keep putting things off. I mean, everyone already complains it's laughable how long government takes to do anything. We can't use that as an excuse to keep prolonging things. So I would just say, let's take this into consideration when we are looking at whether it's board direction or consultants, that if we had enough staff, this may not be an issue. But here we are, and we need information. So I'm going to, let's leave that one at that.
Thank you. Commissioner Sachs, are you finished with your comments?
That's a loaded question. Don't ever ask an attorney. I'd like to move that we direct staff, and I read a long statement, and I think that to make it all sort of come together with everybody's comments here, that staff would review the status in the Ag Reserve and focus on specific challenges that I read, and it's now part of the record. And I can certainly have staff look at this as well. And to come back, and Ms. Amara's got a wealth of knowledge. She can certainly begin that inventory. And I think that we have consultants that we have used before in this area that would probably be, and they're independent consultants, that the staff could come back. Let us know. I don't think it would cost that much to take an inventory. This is a very complicated area that concerns certainly more than 500,000 people in the South County area. And yes, it does, Commissioner Weiss. 225 and 225, you add them up, it gets close to 500,000. So I think it's important, and to echo what's been said here, this is why we're here. We had a lively discussion on housing, and we're going to have more work from industry on this. On that issue, this is also a very important discussion. So I would like to move that what I said before, I don't want to have to repeat it, and as well as to incorporate what Commissioner Woodward also requested them to do.
So that would mean staff is going to be doing the inventory, as you said. You're going to get the numbers on a study. The third thing, though, was the pause, and I think that is a bigger discussion by the board than just one person. Because there are things that are already moving in, and we can't just stop them if they're already in the process. So I have, the attorney's light has popped on.
Yes. So as far as a pause on comp plan amendments within the Ag Reserve, my recommendation would be, let's bring back the scope, let's bring back the information that Lisa is, and then at that point, we could probably discuss that if it's appropriate.
And you would, with that would be whatever projects are in whatever phases they are in right now in the Ag Reserve, correct?
Well, so usually the way these pauses work is anything that's in process will continue in process during the pause. It would just be anything that's new after the date of the pause would be prohibited.
But I think the commissioners would like a status report on what is in process now.
Yeah, I think that would be part of the analysis that they're performing.
Okay.
Mayor?
Yes.
I actually came up to address the staffing issue, but I think Lisa started to address it. And even if all of those positions were filled, we are below where we should be on a per capita staffing level. So staff does work hard, they work the extra hours, and we'll continue to do our very best to respond to the board. I would like a little time just to meet with staff so that we can address what is going on and the other hot button issues you have, and then send a memo to the board so we can give you a time frame in which we can bring back the information that you're asking for, if the board is good with
Thank you, and I believe you have a question from Commissioner Sacks.
You look good over there.
Thank you.
What I don't want to have happen is that this thing gets, as someone said here, kick the can down and down. They work hard. We've got issues. I'd like to see, with the recommendation of our attorney, that we come back with an idea of what is there that they can do, and I'm looking at you, Mr. Attorney, and then that they would give us an idea of what the next step is. And if you don't mind, Ms. Baker, I think that we have so much background, so much history in the members of our staff that they can do this without any cost. And then we can discuss whether a formal pause, which has been done before I was here certainly, but which has been done by a board of county commissioners before, be addressed. So I'd like to proceed with what has already been suggested, with the recommendation of the attorney, and to let staff move forward on it, and then let us know, should we have a date certain now, or how do we?
Again, I would like to ask the board, we know this is a priority. I think that Lisa has done a lot, and we've got some documentation data already in her file that she just simply needs to update. I just wanted to get my arms around the other priorities, because she's going to be involved in some of the other issues you've addressed. We'll make this a priority. It'll be an easy priority because she's done a lot of the work. And the estimate as far as the consultant is concerned, that's going to be another subject. But we can definitely bring back status, and we can also identify the projects that are currently in process, so that the board, and I will even ask staff to put together a map so that you know where these projects are and what's being done with those projects.
Could
So
we have
can do that.
a date?
That I would say in the next, we can give you a status update at our next
I'm
meeting.
sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry, Ms. Baker.
Mayor,
Yeah.
Commissioner,
No, that's okay.
I'm
I
just
know.
trying to make
But-
sure that I don't give you misinformation. I don't want to
No.
have to come back to you and say we couldn't do it, but we can do it. We can make it a priority. It'll just push some other projects back. That's all.
Given the length that we know the March 11th meeting is, this is not something that can come back by March 11th. There's just too much in the pipeline before then. But we have a second meeting the end of March.
We do.
Okay, let's put it on the calendar for that. Would that be
That's
acceptable?
absolutely
status.
perfect.
At that point.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
What is that date, Patrick? Yeah. March 27th. Okay, very good. Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
You brought it all home. Thank you.
Anything else? Any proclamations?
I do. I have something else.
Okay.
Okay, so okay. We all know what we're doing here, Ms. Mario.
We already planned on coming back in March for the status of the non-residential uses west of the Ag Reserve, but we weren't going to, I can't get an update of the acreage in the Ag Reserve in March. I could do in April, but not March.
Okay.
I'm just going, for anything you see from us in May will be the same data that we presented last fall. So there's just no way to have an updated inventory in March.
Mayor, what do you
Just
suggest?
April I could do. But
April?
I could do April.
April?
Thank
April
you.
it is. We have a date in April.
The April zoning meeting, the end of the month, the third, fourth Thursday, we can have the updated GIS data for the Ag Reserve.
Would that be okay?
April 24. April 24th it is. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
I do have one more thing.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you. And this is an issue that has been before the board before, and that is the issue of Brookside. And this is we had on November 15th, 2022, we directed staff to provide a report on the history of the county's acquisition of the Brookside property, and to allow for development of the real estate holding. And then on December 6th, 2022, county staff requested our board direction regarding a potential text amendment to the county's comprehensive plan to allow for the development of the Brookside property in light of the restrictions that currently encumber the same. So at this point, I think what we're going to do is what I would like to propose is to give staff direction to allow them to submit necessary applications so that we can address these issues together as a board with staff direction. Do you want me to put it in American English?
It's just,
Okay, I will.
Isn't that counterintuitive to what you just asked for as a pause?
No, we're not taking the pause issue right now and I'm looking at the attorney. And the reason is because we have to look at the inventory as well. This is part of that whole scheme. And so we're not going to address the pause for privately initiated.
No. My concern is this property is under restrictions. We have, I don't know if it's a deed restriction or a conservation easement. That would have to be released before they could file any applications for development. That's my understanding. So would the direction be to bring an item to discuss that back to the board?
I think if I may, Mayor, respond to the attorney.
You can, and then Patrick, your light is on.
Okay. Mr. Attorney, we have been bouncing this issue back and forth since at least from my records reflect, of 2022, spring of 2022. And it is part of our board direction that we gave to the staff to let us know about what are the restrictions on this property. And I think that we need to move on it. We need to at least start the process because we have been discussing it for a while, and I'd like to start the initiation process to review it. That would take years as we go through this process. But I think at this point, and this is what I have been discussing with all of this inventory and two commissioners from the South County area, this is something we need to begin to initiate. So that's why I would like to begin that process as soon as staff is ready for it.
Well, I'm not sure what the process exactly would be. I think Patrick can probably address that better, but yeah, so Patrick, please.
So the way the board addressed this last time, this issue has been out there. And previous board direction was, and some of you might remember, Isby and I came and did a short presentation, explained the real estate interest the county has in this property, explained the history, the bond purchase, the sale, the restriction that's on it, et cetera. That is something of a precursor to, we control the ability to accept the application. There's a conservation easement on the property. You can't develop on that acreage. It's in our favor. And we can go through this in a larger presentation. So two routes the board could go. We could go the way we did previously, come and share that information with you again. We have two commissioners who weren't here for that, run through that point. The other route would be, if we did accept an application, know that you're going to get a recommendation. You would have to deal with that real estate interest piece at hearings along the way. And I think it's cleaner, quite frankly, to get your direction and address how to handle that real estate interest first and then proceed from there. Opportunities there for potential applicant to provide some ideas, certainly meet with board members, talk it through, et cetera. But as far as going down the road too far with an application before you've had that opportunity to weigh in, that might be more efficient, but certainly we'll work at the board's pleasure.
Thank you. Commissioner Weiss.
I think my preference would be to do what Mr. Rutter is recommending. I think we have heard this before. My understanding is there's no information that potentially would make this And I think it does deserve us to hear about it and hear what they're doing as a board, or what the potential is. And let's just have a discussion about it, and we'll see where it leads from there. That would be my recommendation.
Vice Mayor.
I agree with Commissioner Weiss, but maybe there's a clarity point. Can we just let them kind of, this information, if they submit, I don't know, is there a difference? Is there a preliminary application versus a full application? Can we let them submit an application so that then we, the board, can make a decision based on that?
Could you? Yes. I would tell you, though, that the recommendation, they could not be approved without this board releasing the conservation easement on the property.
Now, hold on, Pat, so I understand where we're going with this. You would have to almost recommend denial, if I'm understanding you.
Correct.
Because it doesn't currently, a potential of the application doesn't currently comply with our code as written.
It's not even your code.
Because, or with anything, because
Correct.
it's unprecedented, let's say.
This is extremely unique.
Okay, so again, understanding that going in, I think having them submit at least an application to put this to bed or to proceed forward one way or the other seems to be an obvious choice.
So if I can, somewhere in between, Ms. Sabina, I think we could be back at the March BCC zoning meeting. So if we don't take action on an application, let us come back to you, dust off that presentation, come back to you, get that information. We can move relatively quickly on that point. You give us direction at the end of March.
Okay. Is that amenable to everyone? Yep, okay. Commissioner Sachs? All good?
Sold.
I don't know if it's the highest bidder or the lowest. Vice Mayor.
Thank you very much, everybody, for your patience on this. And this is why we need to do a little work together on it. And I appreciate all the comments and support. And I look forward to another lively discussion in March. Thanks,
Thank you.
Mayor. Thank you. And I'm done.
Thank you. Commissioner Woodward.
Thank you, Mayor. And that I already addressed the first part of what I sent you guys yesterday, so we've got that settled. The second part of what I was going to request from the board is support for Boca Helping Hands appropriations request. I met with them. This is it's $427,700 that they are requesting from the state for a job training program. They have signed a memorandum MOU of understanding, thank you, with CareerSource. So this is providing for vocational training and certifications for people who qualify. Their biggest one being CDL licenses. So their appropriations bill is being run, and I'm just asking for us to, I guess, add it to our list of support.
Do you want a letter of support from the board?
That would be fantastic, too.
We can do that.
Okay, yes.
Under the mayor's signature, that's fine, if that's okay with the rest of the board?
Staff here, so we can
Yes.
Okay, exactly. We're just going to write the letter ourselves, you know?
Also, thank you, and Boca Helping Hands thanks you as well. Also, just we're all going to be going to Tallahassee, or I guess most of us are going to Tallahassee next week, so hopefully we'll see you all there, and we have a very successful Palm Beach County Days. Thank you.
Commissioner Powell.
I got nothing.
No dog in this fight?
Commissioner Weiss.
I want to thank staff for all the hard work you guys do each and every day, but especially with what you have to go through here. So thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
I'm going to echo the sentiment of thanking staff. And also, I did have a request. In the essence of needing more information, there is a touchy subject that was briefly brought up earlier that I don't plan to talk about, so no need to interrupt me. But I would like the county attorneys to arrange a shade meeting in regards to Transit Village so that we, the board, can get information on where it stands and get updated and actually talk about it and participate in the decisions that are coming about with that lawsuit with the county.
I'll talk with the county attorney about it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sachs. Thank you.
Mayor,
Commissioner Powell. Oh,
I
sorry.
made a mistake. I do have two things.
Hold
One
on a
thing.
second.
I need to ask for permission to do a proclamation off-site honoring Aaron Lockhart and Christopher Redding for their contributions, outstanding contributions to music.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Or I'll third.
Did you get that? Okay. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
That was only one.
Oh, sorry. The other proclamation is for Vera Farrington, who passed away, and we want to do an off-site proclamation for her. She was part of the Spady Museum, and her daughter, Charlene Farrington, will be receiving that proclamation. So that's the second proclamation.
Second.
Third.
We have a first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth.
Thank you.
All in favor? All opposed? See that the motion carries 6-0. Thank you. Vice Mayor, were you done?
Yes, I was just going to wrap it up by saying thank you.
All right, I actually have 2 board appointments. I would like to appoint Mark Feldmesser to the Infrastructure Surtax Independent Citizens Oversight Committee. Say that 3 times fast. And I would like to reappoint Cherie Pavlik to the Zoning Commission. And would you request my off-site proclamation, please?
I would like to recommend for Mayor Marino to be able to do an off-site proclamation declaring March 6, 2025 as Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office Volunteer Day. And this will be presented at their annual Volunteer Awards ceremony on March 6th.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? See that motion carries. And before I close my comments, yes, sir? Yes?
My
Yes?
boss.
Wow, that was quick.
I hurried.
I didn't know the elevator moved that fast.
Yeah, I heard the comment about requesting a shade meeting, and I just wanted to clarify, we cannot do a shade meeting just to discuss a litigation. There is currently litigation with Transit Village, as everybody knows. We're happy to meet with you in your office and discuss it at length. There is nothing for us to hold a shade meeting on at this time.
Mayor?
Sure.
Are you saying there's nothing to have a decision on? Because literally, as a board, could we not decide what we want to do now?
We're in the middle of litigation. We've had mediation, as you know. Mediation was unsuccessful. It just got moved to the end of the trial docket. There's a pending motion for summary judgment. There is no offer on the table for us to bring to this board to discuss in a shade meeting. There's no such thing as executive session. There's no way for us to get together and talk in private about litigation unless there is an offer on the table that I need to bring to you and discuss. Shade meetings in Florida are very, very limited because, as you know.
Was there an offer previously on the table?
There's been nothing that we needed to bring to the board in a shade meeting.
But was there an offer?
There's been various offers, including offers that were
And
made.
have any of those offers been brought to this board?
We, as always, when we handle litigation, we bring offers to the board as appropriate, and the board handles those
And
offers.
who deems what's appropriate to bring to the board?
There's a risk management roundtable, there's a litigation department, and we handle litigation for this board. And we do not want the board to be in a position of having people litigate their cases in public in front of you. That's not how we handle litigation. We understand.
That's not what we're asking for.
No, you're asking for a shade meeting. That's illegal. I can't do that for you right now. If Transit Village, who's sitting here, wants to present some new offer other than the same thing that they've been offering for the last 2 years, we'd be very happy to discuss that with the board if it's worthy of being discussed. It is my job to evaluate these cases, and that's what we do. And when there's a legitimate, sincere offer, then we would be happy to bring that to you and discuss that in a shade meeting. But there has been no such thing.
Respectfully, I disagree. We are the board. So the fact that you are making the decision for us on whether an offer
discuss this in your office
is brought to us or not. I'm not even discussing details. I'm saying in general our process, whether an offer is brought to the board or not, that I find concerning. I feel if there's an offer, we should as a board be deciding that.
If this board looked at every offer that we had for every litigation that comes across our desk, you would be meeting to discuss offers all the time. We do, when we have a legitimate offer, send notice to you all and let you know that we have dismissed that offer because it does not meet the requirements that would pass legal scrutiny.
In the essence of compromise, so how about this? If any board member or individual would like a particular topic of, whenever an offer is represented on a particular project, we can ask for that. So on this one, if there are any offers, I would like this board to be aware and have us as a part of that discussion.
I am happy to notify this board I'm happy to notify this board of any offers that are made. And then if this board wants to have a a shade meeting on that particular offer, it will be limited to that particular offer. There are minutes taken. Those minutes are released after the litigation is complete. These are very narrow and carefully scoped out meetings. We can do that. This board always has that option, and I am happy to do that for you. However, I do not encourage board members to be personally interested in particular litigation other than the general matters that we bring before you and let you know of. We're happy to discuss them in detail in your office. I'm happy to bring the litigators there. I'm happy to show you pleadings. We're happy to do all of that, and we can justify everything that we have done. But we are not going to litigate in public.
Agreed. So yes, please. So on this particular project, if there are any offers, please bring them. Any new offers, please bring them to the board.
Fine.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sachs.
Get a little understanding of this. When I first became a commissioner, there was a big legal issue of the ski lake, and in my district, and it was contentious. So I met with the attorneys, all the attorneys in the conference room, and I expressed, I represent people, and I wanted to make sure that the people whom I represent were going to be well represented by county litigation team, because it is separate. Our attorneys here do not represent us; they represent county government. So we
represent us as a board.
Well, we're county government. We're county government, folks. We are government. But I wanted to be sure that what our county government's attorneys were doing was going to take care of the people whom I represent. This is a similar situation. I appreciate you coming on up, and I think that our concern, and not just mine but others here, is that the people whom we represent, who talk to us all the time, that their issues and their opinions are being well represented in a way that reflects the best of county government. So I would encourage any commissioner who wishes to sit down with county attorneys, litigation staff, and discuss it. I did about the ski lake and the fishing pond they were going to have. I won't say anything more about it, but it has been resolved, and I felt good that I had that opportunity to discuss it. And I think this is the same thing. So I encourage us separately to sit down with county attorneys, their litigation team at any time, and have that discussion. And it makes us better representatives, God bless you, of our people, and it empowers county attorneys to let them know when they walk into a courtroom what the people of our county really want. So, and I look forward to that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. You were I was in the middle of ending my comments. Oh my God, it's been a long meeting. This weekend is the Cognizant Classic in the Palm Beaches. I would like to invite everybody out there. It's at PGA National in Palm Beach Gardens.
Of course, it's during makeup.
And of course, it's during NACO. I am not. I have 2 broken ribs. So no, I'm not playing. There you go. I'm not a PGA professional anyway. I'm an LPGA professional, but that's okay. Could we vote on me playing? Oh gosh, no. I will pass on that. But I do hope everyone enjoys their week. Please travel safely to those that are going to NACO. For those that are going to FAC, we'll see you there. This meeting is adjourned.